We're back again with another stimulus check update for you for today, Tuesday, September 1st of 2020. Make sure you watch this video all the way through to the end. That way you don't miss out on a special bonus that we have in store for you at the end of the video. And we do stimulus check update videos every single day. And today we're going to be talking about a second stimulus check on the way. Good news for tenants. Second stimulus check update. And also Nancy Pelosi fact check on two important issues that she had brought up. So if you haven't already, definitely subscribe to the channel using the big red button below. So that way you don't miss out on more of these stimulus check update videos that we do each and every single day. So that way you can keep aware of what's going on with your second stimulus check. And today we had some awesome news coming from the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin. He testified before Congress, which we talked about him doing last week here on his channel in a video. And also, the Trump administration passed executive order today to address the 40 million people that are at risk of being evicted from their homes. And also, the Senate Republicans putting together a new bill for stimulus aid to the American people also as well. And we also have real progress also as well coming from Mark Meadows, the White House Chief of Staff, and an update on the negotiations as they have been going so far since they first began on the second stimulus package, which contains our second stimulus check. So first and foremost, we're going to start off with talking a little bit about the Trump administration and how they are dealing with the 40 million people who are at risk of being evicted from their homes. And this has been reported according to The Hill. The Trump administration issues a sweeping eviction ban. So what had happened is the Trump administration issued an order today banning landlords from evicting tenants from their properties today. And also these are tenants who can no longer afford to rent due to income loss to the pandemic. The order was issued by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC. It would make it illegal to evict any individual who expects to make less than $99,000 or a joint filing couple that expects to make less than $198,000 in 2020. And the tenants would still be required to pay rent owed per the terms of the lease, but will be allowed to stay in their unit through the end of the year. Now, the national eviction ban was issued under a federal law that gives the CDC director authority to impose measures to prevent the spread of communicable disease as he or she deems necessary. The provision specifically refers to filling the gaps left by inadequate state-imposed public health measures, does not directly mention financial aid or overriding contracts between citizens, raising questions about its legality. Now, in order to qualify for the eviction protection, a tenant must declare that their 2020 income will fall below the threshold, less than $99,000 for an individual, less than $198,000 for a joint filer, set out in the order. And they sought all potential sources of federal housing aid, and also that they cannot afford to pay the rent due to a pandemic-related job loss or expense despite their best efforts to do so also as well. So I found that quite interesting that Trump actually followed up to his previous executive order with this new executive order coming from the Trump administration and the CDC. Actually, something like this that they issued today is a little more concrete. It's much more effective. This is actually a national ban saying that landlords cannot evict tenants at all. Okay, and all the tenant has to do is prove that they make less than $99,000 a year if they are an individual, or if it's a couple filing jointly, if they make less than $198,000 a year, and prove that they cannot pay the rent due to expenses that they incurred, and also that they've been affected by the pandemic, which is pretty easy to prove. Everyone has been affected by the pandemic pretty much, okay? And also, so I found that quite interesting, and I guess that's a plus up for Trump under his belt, moving forward, getting closer to the election, okay? And also, we found interesting testimony by Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin that we want to cover just some of the highlights of what he had to say today before the House Select Committee in the House of Representatives, also concerning the agreement that the Democrats, Republicans, and the White House have on issues concerning the next stimulus package, and disagreements also as well, and his stance on that $2.2 trillion number, a price tag that Nancy Pelosi wants. And we just want to get into this just a little bit. I'm not going to play the entire thing because it's a pretty long hearing or, testimony here. But I'm just going to play about roughly 2 minutes of highlights here. And so let's listen in and hear a little of what Treasury Secretary had to say today.
As a compromise from your position on $1 trillion.
I do not support 2.2 trillion, but what's more important is what is the breakdown in getting money to American workers, American families, kids, where we can agree on money. There is tremendous areas of agreement, and that's what we should be doing right away.
So what are those areas of agreement?
Oh, I believe there's enormous agreement on the PPP. I want to thank you and others. I think on a bipartisan basis, the committees here in the Senate have made improvements to the PPP going forward. I think there's an agreement on money for schools. There may be a difference as to what it is. There's an agreement on enhanced unemployment going forward. There may be a slight disagreement in what the amount is in calculation. I think there's been an agreement on direct payments, as I mentioned earlier. There was even an agreement on postal, which seems to have more excitement and more interest in the postal has ever had in the history of time. But there's plenty of areas of agreement where we may be differing on amount. But again, my strong...
If I may, your big disagreement is on city and state. Is that right?
Again, it's
Jordan keeps saying they have plenty of money. And again, I'm not so sure that's true.
Chair Waters, I want to be careful because I think it is hard to negotiate in a public agreement in a public way. But I would say we conceded, Chief Meadows and I, on behalf of the president, we had reviewed this with the president in an effort to get a deal done and get other things that are very important for the American public, even agreed to put more money on the table for cities and states. Unfortunately, Senator Schumer and Speaker Pelosi do not want to sit down at the negotiating table unless we publicly agree on a top line. My own opinion is we should go piece by piece in any area of the legislation we can agree on. We should have the House and the Senate pass.
Okay, so that's pretty much what Stephen Mnuchin had to say. Some of the highlights, just 2 minutes of it, pretty much, because I found that was a very important part of his testimony before Congress today. And just some of the important aspects of it here that he said when interviewed by Maxine Waters from the House of Representatives also. And he mentioned the areas of agreement when asked by Maxine Waters. He said they agree, Democrats, referring to the Democrats and Republicans and also the White House, they agree on money for the PPP. That's the Paycheck Protection Program, which gives funding for small businesses. And also, they agree for money for schools. They agree for extending the unemployment, but not in the amounts. They don't agree on the amounts, but they agree to extend the unemployment. The Democrats in the House want to extend it by $600 per week. The Republicans in the Senate have made proposals for $200 a week, and their most recent proposal was for $300 a week until next year. The White House has passed executive orders to extend the unemployment by $400 per week, which the states will have to come up with $100, which is quite uncertain right now. Some of them can petition to the federal government for that $100 to be covered. And also, he mentioned direct payments to Americans. He's referring to stimulus checks. So they also agree on stimulus checks also as well. They agree on the $1,200 stimulus checks. There may be some small disagreements as far as how much dependents should get, but they both agree that dependents should get a check this time around, which is different from what they passed in the CARES Act back in March, where dependents did not get a check. Okay. And also he mentioned that he does not agree with the $2 trillion price tag that Nancy Pelosi wants. And as far as disagreements on city and state funding, he really did not make it clear too much or speak too much on the disagreements. I believe what he wanted to do was be positive, and his intention today was to try to move closer to getting a deal done between the White House, the Democrats in the House of Representatives, and the Senate too also as well, and some of the Republicans in the Senate as well. Because as you know, Mitch McConnell said that at least 15 to 20 of Republicans in the Senate do not want any stimulus bill or package or whatever passed at all in the Senate. So that brings us on to our other news for today, where we have the Republicans. They say the Senate will take up a new stimulus bill next week amid the stalemate with the Democrats. So I found that, quite interesting also as well, because they have proposed, I believe, 2 or 3 proposals. Well, actually, it was more proposals than that. We still have not seen any text bill or any vote. They haven't voted on anything. But this was reported by USA Today. It says a top Republican senator said today that the GOP-controlled Senate will likely take up a new stimulus bill next week, though it's going to face opposition in the House of Representatives because it's such a small bill. Now, Senator John Barrasso, a Republican from Wyoming, he's the third-ranking Republican senator, and he told Republicans today that the goal was to consider the focused, targeted measure. The bill would exclude things that the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi put in her bill that's unrelated to the pandemic, though the bill's details has not been finalized yet. Now, the pandemic has put millions of people out of work. It's hobbled businesses. It left local governments scraping for money. And many relief programs Congress approved in the spring has since dried up. It puts pressure on the House and Senate to come up with a new round of stimulus funding. Now, the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, he told CNBC earlier today that he also expected a Republican proposal to be put forward sometime next week. But he did say that in the negotiations, as far as those have been concerned, over the next stimulus bill, that real progress has been made. And actually, Stephen Mnuchin, Mark Meadows, they're referring also as well to money that has been left over from the CARES Act that has not been spent, which is between $100 billion and $150 billion. And one of the Republicans in the Senate's proposals will give the states and the cities $150 billion. So if you add the $150 billion to the $150 billion, then you have $300 billion. Now, what does that mean? Well, basically, that means that the Republicans, the Democrats, and the White House, they're really not $1 trillion apart anymore, or trillions of dollars apart, as you have seen in other articles in the days before. The agreement, the offer from the White House and Mark Meadows went from $1 trillion up to 1.3. And Nancy Pelosi's offer, she cut her offer down from 3.4 trillion to 2.4 trillion. This was the latest, down to $2.2 trillion. So Nancy Pelosi came down $200 billion, and the White House and Donald Trump went up $300 billion. So the 2 and the 3 equals $500 billion of progress too. And if you add the $100 to $150 that has not been spent in the CARES Act, plus the $150 billion proposal from the Republicans in the Senate, that equals $300 billion, then you would see that they are really not $1 trillion apart. They're actually roughly about $600 billion apart. So they've actually moved a lot closer. Now up to, now I want to move on to Nancy Pelosi and her statement, where we did a video on that, talking about what she had to say in her statement on her website about the reason why the White House has not accepted her proposal and vice versa. Now, she claimed the White House refused to acknowledge funding that experts knew was needed in the next stimulus deal. Now, here's what she said, and we went over this in the last video, but we're going to just take out one sentence of what she said because this is very important, and this is one of the reasons why Forbes had fact-checked her on this by a reporter by the name of Rob Berger. She said the administration's continued failure to acknowledge the funding levels that experts, scientists, and the American people know is needed leaves our nation at a tragic impasse. Now, Roger Berger asked the speaker three things. One, to identify the experts and scientists she was referring to in her statement. Two, to identify the experts that support her demand for $600 a week in unemployment benefits. And three, to identify the experts that support her demand for $915 billion in aid to state and local governments. She has not responded. Now, she was fact-checked on two issues. Enhanced unemployment benefits was the first. Now, this was a report from the Promoting Economic Recovery After the Pandemic. It was authorized by four experts from both sides of the aisle. Jason Furman, who was named by President Barack Obama as chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. Timothy Geithner, Treasury Secretary during Obama administration. Glenn Hubbard, he was the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors under President George W. Bush. And Melissa Kearney, director of the Aspen Institute's Economic Strategy Group. They do not support Speaker Pelosi's position of a $600 weekly benefit because $600 in extra unemployment benefits replaces more than 100% of lost wages. But, however, they propose a system that would pay at most $400 a week in unemployment benefits. Now, issue 2 on the stimulus, state and local government funding, which seems to be a major area of disagreement between the parties in passing the next stimulus bill. And he says, I have yet to find a single expert report that supports a funding level of $915 billion. In a report released in June, Moody's Analytics called for $500 billion in aid, almost half of what Speaker Pelosi is demanding. Under baseline economic assumptions, we project that Congress and the White House will need to enact approximately $500 billion in additional flexible aid to states and local governments over the next 2 fiscal years to avoid major damage to the economy. And that amount wasn't what was needed right now. It covered the next 2 years. So that's not what the states need right now. And definitely not $915 billion, but $500 billion over the next 2 years. Now, more importantly, the experts do not support Speaker Pelosi's demand of $915 billion. So, yes, the fact check, I just found that quite interesting. It came from an article on Forbes that was released just a couple of days ago. And I mean, it leads me to think, well, what is Nancy Pelosi talking about? You know, the reason why she's holding stimulus checks hostage is for state and local funding for $915 billion that experts are saying that is not needed by the states. Okay, the states need roughly about $500 billion over the next 2 years. So they don't really need that right now at this moment. So, I mean, Nancy, I don't know what you're doing here, but you're causing a lot of Americans a lot of unnecessary strife, holding up the stimulus checks for hostage here. But, you know, like I said, the good news is the stimulus checks are still on the way, folks. You know, I believe that deep in my heart. They're getting closer and closer to an agreement on a deal. The Senate is talking about working on a bill next week, and even talks of voting on a bill. Okay. Will that pass in the House? Maybe unlikely that it will pass in the House because Democrats want more than a $500 billion bill. The Democrats in the House, they want at least a $2 trillion bill passed. But we do have good news. I mean, Trump has done something else, another executive order with the CDC, and it protects tenants from being evicted out of their home. So that's all I got for you for today. I don't want to make this video too long, but we'll be back with you again tomorrow with another stimulus check update. And again, stimulus checks are still on the way. They're coming. So just keep up the faith. And from all of us here, make sure that you join our stimulus. Our Facebook group is free to join. You can get numerous more stimulus check updates there. And from all of us here at the How to Get an 800 Credit Score LLC family, stay safe, be blessed. We'll see you in tomorrow's stimulus check update video. Bye for now. My name is Lyndon Baptiste, and on this channel we talk about ways to increase your credit score, build credit, and get approved for the lowest payments on mortgages and lines of credit, travel the world for free, earn extra money with cash back. And if that interests you, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. That way you'll never miss a single video as we make them. See you tomorrow. Peace.